I am the owner and manager of a neighborhood retailer selling outdoor gear. We have high levels of traffic over the holidays, much like other shops. And the most crowded day of the year for us is Black Friday. We thus engage a few seasonal workers each year to work the last few months. I definitely needed to employ several workers quickly last year. As a result, I employed two individuals, Nolan and Kate. They both did a respectable job of working. But Nolan did not speak at all, and he always came across as a little odd. I did not really care as long as he performed his job, however. It goes without saying that I required every employee at the shop to be there on Black Friday. We started operations around 6 in the morning, and even while there was not the same rush that Target or Walmart could have, we still had a good number of people that day. Due to how busy we all were over the first several hours, time passed pretty fast. As the owner and manager, I was doing a little of everything, and I had a representative at each of the registers, which had been continuously backed up. I was rather content since we were earning a ton of sales and money as a result. Around 2 o'clock, business was still brisk. Additionally, I needed to travel to the store's rear area to get some just sold-out products. Actually, our rear room was to the left of the shop. I then approached it and entered. I entered as quickly as I could. I had just seen the majority of my employees, so I did not believe any of them would be in there until I heard motions coming from the corner as if someone else was in there. I moved a little bit more to the source of the noise, even though it was still very dark. Then I spotted 5 big guys holding many crates. All of them were wearing ski masks and dark clothing. The entrance to the trash, located behind the shop, was left open, and I soon came to the conclusion that we were being robbed. One of them shouted at me to stay still as soon as he noticed me. I think the distance between us was around 10 feet. I also was not sure whether I would be able to assist in running them. Before I had time to properly consider what to do, one of them came running up to me, grabbed my arm, and held me there. I could only watch as they loaded the boxes into the vehicle parked behind the shop and drove away with enough items to make roughly 2 more journeys. They were taking some of the most expensive items we had in the shop and seemed to know precisely where they were not, so they truly knew what to take. The fact that this was occurring baffled me. For me, it was quite astonishing. I wished I could have utilized a quiet alarm of some kind, but our shop was not very high-tech. The restroom door then opened, and I heard it coming from the shop. When I turned to look, Nolan had entered the toilet via the door. He was astonished as he saw what was occurring. I had hoped that he would flee, turn back, and contact the police. Instead, he stood there and gave me a quick glance before advancing. I anticipated that the guys would seize him as they did with me, but he chose to follow the guys outside and to the rear door. They also forced me to enter via the back entrance. Then Nolan, the 4 guys, and the vehicle were all parked behind the business and left. What I had just seen left me speechless. Nolan was reportedly on the job. The fact that they spared me harm was a comfort. I immediately dialed the police once they departed. Soon later, they showed up there and said that they would search for the vehicle. All of Nolan's information that I was aware of was shared with them. However, all of the cameras were turned off when we reviewed the security video. Alan claims that none of the guys have ever been apprehended. I am a 22-year-old female college student. However, the same incident happened on Black Friday 3 years back. I had a job at a significant retailer. It was also the evening of Thanksgiving. I had a shift from 6 p.m. until midnight since we opened early on Black Friday. I worked as a cashier mostly, but I also received training in electronics and filled in as a manager as needed. As soon as we opened, the shop was crowded and quite bustling. I had experience working on Black Friday, so I understood what to anticipate. However, it was still somewhat bizarre. I worked as a cashier most of the night, bringing up client after customer. At about 11 o'clock at night, when my time was almost nearly finished, the shop was still quite crowded, and the area manager wanted a break. So, at that period, I filled in. Usually, I did not have to do anything other than just ignore the lanes. So it was really simple. After about 10 minutes, I noticed a middle-aged guy check out and purchase a rather big television. He approached me after leaving the store and inquired if I could assist him. What could I do for him? I inquired of him. He then said that he needed assistance loading the television into his vehicle. I affirmed. I then followed him out of the shop. He walked me over to his car, which was parked all the way at the far end of the parking area, where there were still a good number of vehicles. When we got to his vehicle, he promised to unlock the rear. He drove a rather big vehicle. I was glad to see that he was not driving a little vehicle that the television would not accommodate when I first spotted it. He walked over to the front of the vehicle. He then dropped his keys on the ground, which I heard. He said he was sorry and asked if he could use my smartphone's light to locate his keys. I gave him my mobile after switching the flashlight on. He did pick up his keys, went back to the front of his vehicle, and opened it. He said I could open the back, as it was already open. He would then turn back and offer assistance. He had already removed every seat in the rear when I opened it up. Thus, television would accommodate considerably better as a result. He approached the other side of the vehicle from me and helped me take the television out of the shopping basket and into the trunk of his vehicle. He said that he had a sore back once he got in his vehicle and requested that I could move it all the way forward for him. I had to fully enter the rear of his vehicle and push the television forward to do this. But as soon as I had gotten inside the vehicle with my whole body, he banged the trunk shut behind me. It really caught me off guard. I almost had a heart attack from that. The dude was kind of grinning through the glass when I turned around. I assumed it had to be a joke. However, I then saw the guy beginning to approach the driver's door and heard the trunk begin to lock. I was unable to approach him at the front of the vehicle since he had one of those barriers. Things. He then climbed inside and turned the key. When he did, I nevertheless tested the door, but it was obviously locked. I motioned for him to let me out, but he totally disregarded me and sped off. I anxiously searched the area to check if anyone had seen what had transpired, but the lighting in this part of the parking area was terrible. Additionally, I was unable to see anybody around. I grabbed for my mobile to make a call for assistance, but then I recalled that the man was still in place. Fortunately, I still had the walkie-talkie that we use at the business to communicate. I was not sure whether it would still operate at such a far distance, but I knew I had to give it a go. The only issue was that when he talked on it, it beeped incredibly loudly. So that the guy would not hear me, I reduced the volume all the way down to mute and depressed the speaking button. I muttered that I was in the rear of a gray vehicle and that I was having problems. The walkie was so loud that I could not listen back for a reply, since the guy would have heard it. For sure. So once I talked, I had to silence it. I could only hope that someone heard me and took me seriously in the shop. While I was being ignored, the guy just continued driving the automobile. Aside from warning me once that something horrible would happen to me if I did something wild or dumb, I just sat in the backseat as far away from the guy as I could and pondered his intended course of action. For about 10 minutes, we traveled along a route that was rather congested before turning off into a calmer road. When I was about to give up, something unexpected happened. Behind us, I saw flashing lights. He pulled over on the side of the road after I heard him swear. I was expecting that the cops would also stop, and indeed they did. One of the nicest emotions I've ever had was that I was promptly escorted out of the vehicle once the guy was taken into custody. One of the shop employees really contacted Release after my walkie-talkie call had been successful. After the event, I was granted the following 4 weeks off from work. Since then, I have not yet worked a Black Friday. I always go shopping on Black Friday with my closest buddy. It's a ritual. On Thanksgiving, we often begin late at night and work through the night, sometimes all night. We had 3 places in mind that we wanted to visit a few years ago, the first of which was a really large and well-liked store. We arrived just as they were about to open, and there was a sizable queue of people waiting outside the doors. People rushed into the shop as soon as it eventually opened, filling it to capacity. When we entered, it seemed like a huge crowd was racing around the shop since there were people virtually everywhere. There were practical people everywhere, with the electronics sector having the most concentration. It was a magnificent sight to see. We saw individuals getting into an altercation and other customers yelling weird things as the shop became rather chaotic. All of this occurred within the course of approximately 10 minutes before we went to look at the items we were interested in, which did fit pieces that were on sale. We were both gazing at the Fitbit when we saw the man with the clown mask approaching from about 10 feet away and just staring at us. Although there were several people in between us, we could tell that he was gazing right at us. Additionally, if we made a little movement, his head would follow suit. We made the choice to purchase Fitbit before moving on to another area of the gadgets. We then realized that the clown guy appeared to be pursuing us. He was dressed normally, with trousers and a sweater. However, the mask was among the spookier ones I had ever seen. He was completely disregarded as we continued to browse. However, he was beginning to annoy us because of how clear it was that he was trailing us. We should go to the other end of the shop, my companion said. Thus, we acted. It grew incredibly bothersome that the clown guy tracked us the entire way there, so I approached him and begged him to stop. He appeared to have no interest at all when I did, however. In fact, he leaped away as I approached him, as if I were a threat or something. We were prepared to leave that store at this point and go to another one. We were a little concerned that the man wearing the clown mask might chase us out of the shop, but we reasoned that he likely would not. The lengthy queues made it difficult for us to check out. The clown guy was standing at the end of the checkout simply looking at us while we waited. None of the staff appeared to notice or care since the shop was so busy. Even so, there had been a close call with another group of individuals. After finishing our checkout, we proceeded to the exits. The clown man immediately followed us out the front door when we left. We made the decision to continue disregarding him and go to our vehicle. At a 4-way stop sign with traffic jams in both directions, we had to halt. The time came for us to go. The clown did have to wait for their turn, so we knew this was a good thing. Instead of waiting, however, they rushed through the junction immediately behind us, drawing the horns of several passing vehicles as they did so. The quantity of effort they were exerting merely to pursue us genuinely frightened us. We heard a siren and faint flashing lights behind us, however, not long after the two of us had already passed the junction. Fortunately for us, one of the vehicles waiting in line at the junction was a police car. While the clowns and the police sped past us, we stopped on the other side of the road. For about 20 seconds, we observed as the clowns continued to go forward until eventually stopping and being halted by the cops. At this point, we turned around and headed the other way. For the most part, we did not see those idiots again.